Good morning. My name is Kelsey. This is a part of our service that we call charitable giving. It's the opportunity for me to say thank you. Thank you to the generosity of our community who gives to help support this church financially. It enables us to bring you things like the service, whether you're here in person or you're listening to this at home, watching through YouTube or listening on our podcast, the music that you heard before the service started, the chances for us to go out into the community and really make a difference. It is you who enables that. So thank you so very much. To those of you who'd like to support Friends Church, whether that be on a one-time basis or whether that's on an ongoing basis, there's a few options for that. You can go to our app. There's a button that's there that says click to donate. Feel free to click on that and we'll give you the options that you can add your credit card, either to be part of our pre-authorized giving program that allows you to donate monthly or just a one-time donation. Also, too, if you're here in person, you can complete one of the envelopes at the back of the church and slide that to one of our volunteers, and they'll be able to get that where it's needing to go. Thank you so much for what you do to Friends Church. Without you, we truly would not exist, and we want to thank you very much for your very, very generous donations that enable us to do this for you. Have a great Sunday.
Check, 1, 2. Hey, there we go. Now you can hear me. We'll see how well this works. To start off, just want a quick question, and you don't answer, but who went to bed an hour early to keep the amount of sleep they needed? Oh, you people. I'm so jealous. For some reason, I think it's the opposite way, and I stay up an hour later, and then, this morning. Ugh. So I want to start today with a nice Okay. Hey, how do I sound? Yay! This is Jeff's EQ. Do I sound like Jeff? I suddenly have longer hair. Thanks for being patient, everybody. Okay, so where was I? Oh, that's right. We're talking about sin today. That nice, calm, relaxing, bright, cheery topic. So let me start this way and ask you, what is sin? It's one of those words that when someone asks you that, you're like, well, it's obvious. And then you start to think and you go, actually, I'm not exactly sure. We know it's bad, right? Sin is bad. We know that. We know somehow it's at the center of the Christian tradition. So it's not some obscure thing. It's like sin's right there in the middle. But what is it? And what happens if you do it? I'm 48-ish, give or take a year or two. I'm in the 48s somewhere. For the last 47 and a half years, I would have said, I know what sin is. I grew up in the Christian tradition. I can define it for you immediately. In the last couple of weeks, as I started to study other views in our tradition of what sin means, I'm realizing I didn't know a whole lot at all. I inherited, like all of us, we inherited this huge idea of sin without actually ever thinking about what is sin. Think of the amount of guilt you feel, or the amount of things you think, well, that's sinful, or somehow I should probably feel guilty about that. It's all based on the definition of sin. What if there's a bunch of stuff in your life that is sin that you're missing? Well, then you're screwed. What if there's a whole bunch of stuff that isn't sin that you haven't been doing? Well, that just means that life's been a lot less fun, right? Think of all the chocolate cake you can eat. So today I want to start by exploring the traditional view of sin, and we're not going to get rid of it. I just want you to understand what sin means in the traditional sense. And then I want to show you a new view of sin that I'm telling you, I haven't had something blow my theology apart like this in a long time. I love these moments. So let's start with the traditional view of sin. I want to take you all the way back to the very beginning, before we had stuff written down, when stories were just told around the campfire, to the very beginning of the Bible in the Christian tradition. We have stories of creation. If you're in the building right now, look up for a second. You see these hoops? That's actually a creation story. So there's about 4 different creation stories. They're all kind of similar, kind of different. Some of them are very different. And the one I want to tell you today starts like this. There's a character named Adam. Now, when I say there's a character named Adam, the word Adam can be translated as somebody's name, but it also means mankind. So I could say it this way. In the beginning, mankind, all y'all, were in the garden. And it was perfect. Perfect. We still use the word Eden to be the perfect place. Sitting on top of the mountain, it's Eden. And along with mankind, who we call Adam, is Eve. Now, the word Eve means mother of all. So just in case we hadn't figured out that this story is about us, the writers like mankind and mother of all are there in the garden, having a good time. Think of the most beautiful garden you can ever imagine. Kind of capture the smells and the sounds of birds and the rustling of the trees. It's amazing. Now, this is a story about sin. And so to find sin, we need to add one more character to this story. And the character's name is God. Now, some of you might be thinking, why is he saying the character God? And I'm doing it really particularly. If I say the word, if I say God shows up in the story, in some people's minds, what they're thinking is, that is God. The reality is, this is a story. It's written through the culture. It's written through the ways they talked about things. And so when they say God, they don't have a line on God. They're speaking of God in a way that makes sense in their culture. Similar cultures in that area, the Ugarites, they use this word in the same way. Akkadians use the word in the same way. It's a character that's more than human, that lives kind of up in the sky, and you don't want to piss him off. Now, I use the word him because that's traditional, but gods could be male or female. But here's the key. The God has to be superhuman, and they have to add one more thing for us to get sin. They have to make something prohibited. You see, sin in the Christian tradition, as we classically understand it, God, the super being, the character God says, you can have anything you want in the Garden of Eden, anything you want. Go hard. Except for the apple. This is from the tree in the middle of the garden. You can have anything but this. You see, up until this moment, you can't have sin. Because you need the character God to prohibit something. Now we have the potential for sin. So you see, in the Christian tradition, you need a super being God to say something is bad. Something is wrong. Not because it's wrong in itself. It's not because this apple isn't delicious. I'm going to eat this apple at the end of the service. Wait. Yeah, I will. I was like, is that a sin? Thank you. Good call. Sanitize it, wash it, maybe pray over it a few times. I don't know. We need to have something prohibited. Now we have the potential for sin. And so there's mankind, all of us, and mother of all the rest of us. And we finally have something we can't have. And now we have the potential for sin. Not because the apple's bad, but because the character God said, don't. Let me add a fourth character to our story. So we have mankind, mother of all, so all y'all, all of us. We have the character God who prohibits something, and along comes the tempter, the accuser, the serpent, later to be called ha-Satan, which is the Greek or the Hebrew word for accuser. We usually use the word Satan. Satan strolls up and says, hey, Eve, how's it going? Good, good. So, are you guys allowed to eat everything in this garden? Did God say, you shall not eat this? And by the way, whenever I have these kind of like negative prohibitions, using Old English sounds better, doesn't it? You shall not eat the apple. Doesn't it just make it sound like it's got some more weight to it? So I use a really old translation for that one because I thought it was funny. That's totally a Vince joke. Thank you for the laugh. I appreciate that. Grammar as a joke. Anyways, this is how I work. So, you shall not eat this apple, right? Now, what are you thinking about right now? Eating the apple. Well, what kind of apple is it? Does it taste good? Is it mealy, or is it like one of those crisp, delicious apples? Did someone wash it ahead of time so it's, COVID-free? All we're thinking about is the apple. But we still don't have sin. In my mind, if I'm Eve, I am literally obsessed with this apple. I'm sitting in front of the apple tree, eating my carrots, going, I bet you that apple will be better. Oh, that apple probably is really good. Ooh, I wonder what the apple's like. But we still haven't sinned. Sin-free in the traditional system. We're all good. Until that moment. And we've all done it. You can't hold on any longer. In your mind, what is the super being God, the character God in your story prohibiting? What's the stuff that's bad? People come in here all the time. They'll sit with me and we'll be in here and then they'll swear and they're like, oh, shit, God's going to hit me with lightning. Right? Because somewhere, somehow, their belief is that God prohibited swearing. In my tradition, booze. You could not drink booze. I don't know why they picked booze, but whatever. It was booze. They don't realize that, like, the monastic people, the most fundamental Christians, are the ones who learned how to make beer. Anyways, my tradition, booze. You could not drink booze. Sex was bad unless it was for procreation, and for sure not if you're not married, and for sure not if the person you're having sex with is the same gender as you. That's what's prohibited. And so when you're in the back of the car, you're 18 in the back of the car with your preferred gender sitting next to you, and you're going, how are you doing? And they're going, how are you doing? And things are getting hot and heavy, right? We have that which is prohibited, which is exactly what you're about to do in the back of that car. That's the apple. So think for a second of all the different apples that you grew up with, that you maybe still believe. Or maybe, if you're like me, you don't believe in them, but you're nervous you maybe should. Or maybe you're thinking, there's a whole bunch of stuff that the character God has prohibited, but I don't know what it is. I could be eating apples right now. I didn't even know I was doing it. What if there was a whole thing about shaving your head? Me and you, we're in trouble, right? I didn't know. My hair was just skanky and I don't like to do it, so I just shaved it off. Now I'm sinning. The serpent comes up to Eve. She knows what's prohibited. You don't eat the apple. And the serpent says, really? So she takes a big old bite. She hands it to Adam. Mankind takes a big old bite. And we finally have sin. That which is prohibited, transgression. Now in the story, in the apples, every transgression we've ever done. I could sit up here for the next 16 hours and tell you all the transgressions I've done in my life. It's the apple. We take a big old bite. And the story says, God says in the beginning, you shall not eat of the apple, because if you even touch it, you'll die. Now here's the deal. Eve takes a chomp, Adam takes a chomp, neither of them die. And so, in the traditional reading of sin, we have to kind of fast forward to the end of life. Because God said, if you take a bite, if you even touch this thing, you're dead. But they didn't die. They lived a full life. But the belief is we have that which is prohibited, we have the transgression, and the consequence is death after a timely amount of years, let's say 85, whatever. But then you go to hell. Anyone ever, right? Hell we know is a bad place, and we know that somehow sin gets us there. So this whole traditional story of sin needs that which is prohibited, needs you to take a big old chomp of the apple, which needs the transgression, and long term, somehow in the future, you're going to go to hell. Now, there's a Jesus story that gets you out of hell, but that's the traditional view of sin. They can sit there obsessing about this apple for months. You can obsess about whatever you think is prohibited. You can sit there and think about it nonstop, but until you take a bite of the apple, you haven't sinned. But the weight of this. So let's just put ourselves in there. Do you know everything that's prohibited? Do you think about all the different denominations, all the different versions of Christianity that keep splitting and splitting and splitting? What often are they doing? They have a different set of things that are prohibited. Someone over here, I know for the church she's from, they're all good with drinking. My church is going, you guys are all going to hell, right? Because drinking is somehow bad, because somehow we believed that God said no drinking. Now we're living in constant fear that we don't have the right set of prohibitions figured out. On top of whether I can actually stop myself from taking a chomp of the apple. Okay, that's your traditional view. Can you feel the anxiety and kind of the angst of, well, am I sinning? Maybe I don't even know if it's sin, and maybe even if it is sin, I'm going to do it anyways, and I hope this whole Jesus story is going to work because I'm going to hell. This is where I was until a few weeks ago. Not because I liked it. It wasn't motivating to me. Was it motivating to you? Or does it just kind of feel like this constant anxiety or fear that's just kind of sitting underneath of life? And then I picked up a book by a guy named Peter Rollins. He's from the Psychoanalytic tradition. He's a Christian scholar. And he said, actually, you guys kind of missed the story of Adam and Eve. You missed sin. So let me rewind again, right? Character, Adam and Eve, mankind, mother of all. Everyone is in the garden. We're all in the garden. God says, you're not supposed to eat this apple of the center. If you touch it, you'll surely die. The serpent comes up to Eve and says, what did God say? Can you eat anything you want? And she says, yeah, but we can't eat the apple from the middle of the garden. Now, this is the part I want to focus on. Remember in the first view, you had to take a bite of this apple for it to be sin. In this view, something really strange is happening right here. The serpent, the accuser, Satan says, did you know that if you take a bite of that apple, you'll be like God? In the psychoanalytic tradition, that's called your lack. The thing that you're lacking, that if you could just get, you would be perfect. Basically, it's advertising. What does advertising tell you? If you just buy this new car, your life will be perfect. If you just get your hair done just this way, you'll be perfect. If you just, right? Are you ever perfect before you've bought what they want you to buy? No. The reality is, we don't even realize we're lacking anything until they show us there's this new man grooming stuff. I didn't even know I needed to groom myself. My whole life, 47, 48 years, I've never, well, that explains everything. Can you feel the lack? The thing that you think, if this pandemic would just lift the restrictions and I could hang out with my friends, then life would be good again. If my kids would just do this, if I could just finish school, if I could just get a job. So to understand this story, I want you to come and bring to mind that thing that is your lack. Or in my case, lacks, plural. What is it, that thing that if I could just get that, then life would be perfect? If I could just meet somebody who loved me and I could love them. If I could just have fun again. That's what the serpent tells Eve. That's what the serpent tells mankind, all of us. That you're not perfect, but there's something, there's a lack. And if you can just get that lack, you'll be perfect. Isn't that a fascinating piece of this puzzle? You see, the lack is the thing that keeps you from being perfect. But sin in the psychoanalytic tradition isn't taking a chomp of this apple. It's believing that there's a perfect to get to. Just in case you're not fully grasping that, because this one blew my mind. Sin isn't taking a bite of the apple. It's not the transgression. It's the belief that we're not good the way we are, that there's some perfect we need to get to. Sin is the belief, not the biting of. The belief that you, right here, right now, aren't imperfect and totally good that way. Part of my brain goes, well, that makes no sense. The goal is to be perfect. The goal is to be sinless, therefore. But in the psychoanalytic tradition, it says, what happens when you see this, the promise of the apple, as the sin? Suddenly I'm looking at my life. I'm on Amazon shopping and I'm going, wait. What lack am I trying to fill here? Think about it. What thing does it feel like you're lacking in your life right now? How much is that driving your life? The belief that that's the model is the sin. In kind of men's, maybe let's say it this way, in unhealthy men groups, there's this idea. There's a character. All of the problems in this group of men, the lack that they're doing, they know what their lack is. They don't have to sit here and kind of think through their lack of like, well, my relationship, I'm divorced, I'm blah, blah, blah. They know what their lack is. It's a few millimeters of bone. Let me say that again. It's a few millimeters of bone. Their lack is because they don't look like that. Can you throw it up for me? How do you like my self-portrait, right? You see, and just leave it up for a second. You see, here's the thing. All of their sexuality, their frustration, their desire to sleep with women and not being able to, their lack is their face doesn't look like that. Their bone structure doesn't look like that. Their muscles don't look like that. And they're obsessed with their lack. And they can even point to what they lack because they've named him Chad. That's Chad. The technical name for him is actually Giga Chad, which means he's like the Chad of all Chads. Chad is the perfection that we all strive for. Chad has no problems. Chad doesn't struggle to get work. Chad doesn't struggle to have sex. Chad's relationships are perfect. His life is perfect. Everything is perfect. If we could just be Chad, everything would be fine. That's the psychoanalytic definition of sin. Chad. The belief that there's a Chad in our lives. Whatever your Chad is. Do you see that the shift in that definition of sin? So let me talk to you about a lack. So I'm a professional public speaker. But swear to God, I have no clue how you folks listen to my voice. When I hear my recording of my voice, I'm just like, oh my goodness. Who would listen to that voice? The guy sounds like he has a nonstop cold. It sounds like he's talking through this like, it's like, it's the worst voice in the history of the world. And every week, I come up here and I think to myself, oh, there's that my voice. They're going to have to listen to my voice again. And then my pale skin, the camera can't even like focus on me properly because my skin is so white that the camera's just like, what do we do with this guy? And so I have this big old like glowing star right here where the camera has no clue what to do with me. And I talk too fast. And I talk about things in my brain, not in my heart. And the list goes on and on. Like I'm telling you folks, it is nonstop lack up here. I can feel it. Monday morning when I review the recording, I can feel my lack. I can tell you what Chad looks like when he's public speaking. And he doesn't look like this. He doesn't sound like this. Now, here's what I want to tell you about how horrible I sound. Think for a moment of your lacks. All those things that keep you from being perfect. Now imagine me walking up here. You know, kind of I sit on the corner before I come up on stage to talk. What if all I'm thinking about is all the things that I lack? All the ways I am not perfect. What if I am fully bought into this idea that there's a perfect out there and I just need to get to it? Well, the first word out of my mouth is going to sound like some cartoon character. I can't have that. Everything that I say will have to get thought through over and over and over and over again. Do you think I'll even be able to say anything to you guys? When you're living in your lack, how does your life look? Mine doesn't look lovely. I'm controlled. I'm cramped up. I'm not living my full self. I'm trying to be somebody that I'm not. It just goes on and on. Can you feel how it is when you're living from your lack? When you're living from this belief that there's some perfect out there and I have to be that thing. The reality is, folks, and I have to apologize, this is what my voice sounds like. Take it or leave it. But more than that, Vince, this is what your voice sounds like. Take it or leave it. There isn't an apple. There isn't a perfect. I will never be Chad. You will never be Chad. The antidote to sin in the psychoanalytic tradition is not don't eat the apple. The goal is to say this: I'm not Chad. You're not Chad. And that's all right. The goal is to profoundly accept who we are as we are. Not because we don't want to ever become better than we are. It's because the pursuit of the apple, the pursuit of Chad, doesn't get us anywhere. You can feel it, right? As your life becomes obsessed with that perfection, how does it go? Anyone early in a relationship, I shouldn't say anyone, most people early in relationships put their best foot forward, right? You're trying to be Chad. Then about a year into the relationship, you fart. The person's like, whoa, you fart? Yeah, I fart. And then you have this whole journey of like unchatting yourself because you're like, I'm not Chad and I can't hold on any longer. It's driving me nuts. Like, I just got to fart. Like, I'm about to die here. That's the psychoanalytic tradition saying, you know what? The belief that you have to be perfect, that's the sin. It's not eating the apple. It's not transgressing against the prohibition. It's the belief that you're not, the belief that there's a perfect out there that you need to strive for. Because when we strive for perfection, our motivations get ugly. We start to become people we're not, driven by things that we can't let go of. You can feel it. If someone needs a perfect body and a pandemic closes their gym, they freak out. Freak out. I have to be fit. It's not, I would like to be fit. It's not healthy for me to be fit. It's not, I really enjoy going out and doing fitness things. It's, I have to be, because my only value is in being perfect, in being Chad. The traditional view of sin, well, it has a lot of beautiful things to it. It has us in this constant anxiety of trying to figure out that which is prohibited and trying to hold on to not transgress against it. But it focuses us in that cycle. The psychoanalytic tradition view of sin says when we strive for perfection, our lives, who we are, gets destroyed. So let me try one more thing to blow your mind. In the psychoanalytic tradition, if you come to the world as a sinner and you look to God to make you perfect, that's the definition of sin. The belief in God, when it's unhealthy, in this tradition says, that's sin. That was the height of holiness in my growing up years. To identify as broken and to say, God's going to fix me because there's something wrong with me, that everything will be fine. That was what the whole thing was about. In this tradition, it says, no, that's the sin. So let me just make sure that I handle this objection cleanly. Some of you, because of our growing up years, and I say our, because I'm in this, are saying, yes, but if you're saying I'm imperfect and that's okay, then what's this all about? We're just all going to be imperfect beings and like I get to do whatever I want? One person messaged me, they're like, so I just get to watch porn nonstop and it's all good? And I laughed. I was like, in the old tradition view of sin, you believe that God prohibits porn and then you try not to transgress. In the psychoanalytic tradition, you say, why do I want to look at porn? What thing do I feel like there's lacking in me that I'm trying to fulfill this way? It's not the porn that's the problem. It's the belief that somehow porn is going to fix me. I'm going to feel loved. I'm going to feel connected. I'm going to feel aroused. I'm going to have the erotic in my life. This view of sin says, We don't strive for perfection because that's the goal. We come to grips with who we are right now in all of our imperfections. And let's be honest, folks, we're all imperfect. And then we strive from a healthy place to be healthier, not because we need perfection to be valuable, but because we choose to live a different way. That's how I can come up here and talk with you guys, with my cartoon voice, in my vampire skin. I choose to be healthier. Where is your lack driving your life? Where do you have that mindset that says, if I could just get this one thing, whatever it is, health, relationship, work, you name it, good hair day, I don't know. If I could just have that thing, it'd be perfect. Where is that driving you? You know how you can tell? When your emotions exceed the situation. They close the gym and you freak out. You get a bad mark in school and you lose it. Someone's driving slow in front of you on Deerfoot and you can't even grasp what's going on because you're going to be late for a meeting, and you cannot be late for a meeting. The world will end if you're late for a meeting. Perfect people are on time for bloody meetings, and this person's screwing it up. When your lack is driving you and something pokes at the lack, you will lose it. Maybe not anger. Sometimes you will just shut right down, like just disassociate. Like there's nothing, I'm this little thing floating in nothing, and my body's over there, and we're not even talking to each other right now. In this new way of looking at sin, I'm not trying to give you permission to do whatever you want. What I'm trying to do is say, what if there's a different way of looking at it than trying to figure out what the character God has prohibited and then trying frantically to never do it? What if that's not the only story? What if there's a story over here that says, somehow we believe that our lack is bad and there's some perfect that we need to get to? And that drive is driving us to react poorly, to be mean to people, to push ourselves past what's healthy. What if that drive is driving us into the ditch? As I started to come to grips with this, I started looking through my life and saying, where do I feel lack? Where is that driving me? If I need to say this message perfectly, I can't have a life. I have to write this message and then rewrite it and then rewrite it and then rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it. And I've been up all night last night rewriting this message. Because I'm telling you folks, if I get to do this message again someday, it will sound different because it's not perfect. And if I need it to be perfect, I will drive myself into the ground to do it. That's the part I think this view of sin wants us to be free of. To see what's driving us into the ditch, and how do we not live that story? So as we leave today, I want to say, where are we driven by our lack of perfection? Can we let that go? I'm imperfect. Not that you needed me to say that, you guys all knew that, but let me just say it. I'm imperfect. You're imperfect. And that's okay. Now let's get healthier. That's my prayer for you all today. Next week, Jeff's going to come and start talking to us about what happens when we feel our lack and how do we hide from it and how do we hide it from everyone else. It's going to be a fantastic message. Have a great week, everyone. Take care.